Now in lesson 6, we're going to talk about enhancing the edit. So we're going to take all the things we've done so far, and this is where we can really start to get creative. We're going through the project again, and we're finding some additional things we can add. It's important to point out that not every project you do will include all of these things, while other projects may include everything on here, and some projects just a couple. The goals in this lesson are, we're going to learn how to adjust the speed of clips. We're going to use effects to modify the look of clips. We're going to use transitions, and we're going to adjust the transform and compositing controls of clips. And what compositing means is it's a fancy way to say stacking clips on top of each other. Finally, we're going to create a compound clip. First up, retiming clips. Before we even get into this, I should point out that you have to make sure that you're retiming the clip for a reason. A lot of times students will speed clips up just to make their project faster, and it can be really distracting for the viewer. Kind of pulls them out of the story because it's not real life. So make sure there's always a good reason to do the retiming of a clip. We can reverse a clip. That's pretty easy. We were supposed to have done that in an earlier lesson, but I'm going to show you real quick right here. Select the clip, click the retime editor, and you can choose reverse. Command R is a keyboard shortcut that opens the retime editor. You can manually adjust the speed of a clip by dragging the retiming handle. And if you decide you don't like what you've done, you can reset the speed of a clip from the retime drop-down menu. When we open the Choose Custom Speed window, we can type in any number that's a little bit further outside the realm of some of the more basic speed changes that are included. When you're in the Choose Custom Speed window, there's a ripple checkbox. It's important now that we've understood a little bit about editing. Ripple means just like it sounds. You're going to get that magnetic timeline effect. If you slow a clip down, it's going to magnetically push all of the clips away down the timeline. If you speed a clip up, it's going to magnetically pull all the clips back down the timeline. Leaving that box unchecked will keep the overall project timing. You can blade the speed of a clip to make interesting and fun effects. Select a clip and park the playhead on the clip where you want to change the speed, and hit Shift B. Double-click the retiming icon and the speed transition HUD appears. Here you can get into the source frame. That'll allow you to do a roll edit and find the content that occurs right between the two speed segments. Next, we're going to work with effects. Sometimes a clip needs a little extra visual enhancement, a little bit of color grade, something to sort of bring it to life. Final Cut Pro has over 200 video and audio effects. Plus, there's all sorts of things you can find online from third parties. You can even make your own effects in motion. Find the effects in the effects browser. And once effects have been applied to a clip, you can see those effects in the video inspector, and they show up in the order in which they are applied. We can apply shape mask and even a color mask to limit the area of a clip that the effect is applied to. When you're in the effects browser, you can double click to add an effect to the selected clip, or you can drag and drop to the timeline. And again, these effects parameters are only going to be available when a clip has been added to the timeline. Once you make some experimentation with the settings, notice that there's an option to reset the parameter from this drop-down menu. Of course, you can apply all sorts of effects to one clip, but make sure you don't go overboard because again, you don't really want to pull the viewers away from the content you're creating. Once you achieve the desired look, you can save an effect, or you can save a combination of effects along with their settings as a preset, and you can use that later across any Final Cut Pro project or library. In the video inspector, click the Save Effects Preset button. Give it a name and make a new category. You can control-click on an effect's thumbnail and make that the default video effect. Option E is the shortcut that applies that default video effect. When you click and select an effect in the video inspector, you see a yellow highlight around the outside of it. You can press Delete to remove an effect. If you just want to disable it to see what it looks like without the effect, just undo the checkbox. To remove more than one effect quickly, and you can do this across a wide range of clips throughout the timeline, select the clips and choose Edit, Remove Attributes. Now we're going to create kind of a depth of field blur effect. We're going to start by adding a Gaussian blur, and we're going to zoom out a little bit and add a shape mask on the Gaussian blur effect. We're going to round out the corners a little bit, rotate it, and maybe experiment with adding a second shape mask as well. Taking a look at the mask blend mode, Add will sum the masks together and expand the effect's alpha channel, and the alpha channel is that transparency layer of that effect, meaning that's where we see the video coming through. Subtract subtracts the selected mask from the previous mask, creates kind of a cutout effect. And Intersect confines the effect's alpha channel to the area where the masks overlap. Next, let's work with some transitions. Transitions can help you move from one time and one place to another to sort of capture some emotion. Or, like Star Wars, they're always using those big old school wipes from one side of the screen to the other. I always like to point out, don't overdo it with the transitions. There's been hundreds of Hollywood movies made where there's just a fade up at the beginning and a fade out at the end. The last thing you want is for people to recognize every time you're editing from one clip to another. So be careful. When you select an entire clip, it applies a transition to both sides. Command T is the default transition, and by default, that's a cross dissolve. In order for transitions to work, you have to have what are called handles, and that is media on the outside of the edit point. Selecting edit points will either give you a yellow bracket to show you that there is some handle, although maybe not always enough, or a red bracket, which means that's the beginning or end of a clip. There's no handles available on this medium. If there's not enough media for a transition, Final Cut Pro will warn you, but know that if you click OK on this screen, it will create a ripple edit, so it'll actually pull the timeline down to give yourself enough media for that transition. So just be aware of that. An easy way to create some handles outside the edit points is to use a slip edit. Remember, you can skim over transitions in the transition browser. You can right-click to make a favorite transition a default. And then know that there are very specific ways you can edit a transition in the timeline. You can either ripple the start of a clip or the outgoing end of a clip by selecting the mouse pointer at the top of the transition. If you click in the middle, you can roll the edit between those two clips. And then if you select a little further down on the transition, you can actually extend or shorten the transition's duration. Now we're going to talk about compositing. Like I said before, that's just a fancy word for stacking clips on top of each other. You can do this in a couple different places. You can find information to do this in the video inspector, or you can find the controls right on the screen. Here you can rotate, scale, crop, and trim an image. And this is how you could place two images side by side for sort of that picture-in-picture effect. Understand that Final Cut Pro will stack those clips in the order that they appear in the timeline, from top to bottom. Don't forget the opacity slider will adjust the transparency of a clip. You can find that in the video inspector, but you can also find that in the video animation editor, which you can access by right-clicking a clip. We'll quickly use these controls to create a 2-up screen, and we can reposition them in the viewer by clicking the transform controls. Trim allows you to cut off parts of an image, and crop trims off parts of an image, but then scales up the result to fill the current frame size. Finally, the Ken Burns display allows you to create that animated zoom in or zoom out and pan effects. Taking a quick look at the video animation editor, from the right-click menu, we can edit some of these parameters in the animation editor. We can option click to make new edit points on those edit lines in the animation window. And finally, if we want to do this across a range of mini clips, we can use the copy and paste attributes command. Simply select a clip to copy it, and then select another clip that you want to match in terms of the transform controls or maybe the opacity, and choose paste attributes. Closing out this section, we're going to talk about compound clips. Final Cut Pro has all sorts of containers. There's clips that hold media. There's the project that holds a collection of clips. There's events that hold a collection of projects and media. And then the library is the largest container of all, which holds all of those things. There's another container called a compound clip. And really, this is just kind of another storyline that can be nested inside of your primary storyline. You could create some sort of an opening animation with text and graphics, put that all in a compound clip, and then you have access to that across multiple projects. Just know that compound clips are what are called live or hot clips, and that means that whenever you manipulate the content inside of them, that updates them wherever they're used in Final Cut Pro. We're going to do one of my favorite things with the compound clip, and we're going to select everything and put it inside a compound clip. And this is kind of one of the basic uses of a compound clip. What we're going to do is apply an effect to all clips at one time. So all of these clips are put into a compound clip by right-clicking. And then we're going to add the letterbox effect, which will give it that kind of Hollywood look. So there you have it. Lesson 6, we have enhanced the edit, and we did it in lightning speed. We varied the speed of clips. We used effects and transitions. We adjusted the transform and compositing controls. And finally, we created compound clips.